Darren McGill didn't expect to be standing in his living room barefoot, blinking at daylight flooding in through a jagged hole where his front door used to be. The hinges had been ripped clean out. Glass shards glinted across the hardwood floor. It didn't feel like a break-in, it felt like a message. He backed away slowly. His dog, Winston, barked from the kitchen, unsettled. Darren turned toward the garage for anything to defend himself, but the driveway was empty. No car screeched away, no strangers in sight, just the quiet hum of Maplewood trails. A neighborhood where the loudest sound most days was a sprinkler switching on. He glanced down and saw something nestled among the debris, a metallic name tag. He squinted. Karen Dunsley, HOA vice president. That was when the panic gave way to confusion. Just 3 weeks earlier, Darren and his wife Lena had moved into the neighborhood. Lena was still away on assignments, something about contractor fraud in Austin, but Darren had been handling things just fine. He'd paid the HOA dues, fixed the fence, even waved to the neighbors. All standard stuff. The trouble began the moment he installed a custom glass front door, etched with a soaring eagle. It wasn't flashy, just different. Karen had appeared on the porch the next morning, clipboard in hand. This isn't approved. It reflects sunlight into people's eyes. Violates community tone, she snapped. Darren had calmly replied, I've read the HOA guidelines. It's decorative glass. No rule says I can't have it. Karen stared him down, lips pinched. We'll see about that. Now, standing in the ruins of that very door, Darren realized just how serious she had been. He picked up his phone and scrolled to the HOA welcome email. Karen's number was listed. His finger hovered. Call her? Yell? Ask why? Before he could decide, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Tires silent on concrete, windows tinted. Out stepped Lena. She wasn't supposed to be back until Monday, but something in her face, sharp eyes, calm stride said she knew everything. Darren opened the garage door, motioned her in, and explained what had happened in under a minute. She didn't interrupt. She didn't blink. She just looked down at the name tag in his hand. She did this, he said, Karen. She literally destroyed our front door. Lena tilted her head and she left her name on it. Apparently, Lena took the tag, ran her finger over the etches and pulled out her phone, but she didn't dial the HOA. She called someone else. I need to file a formal complaint, she said into the receiver. Yes, property damage. Unlawful entry. I'll attach the footage in the report. Badge number 432D. Darren's jaw tightened. Who are you calling? Lena hung up and looked at him. My office. Darren blinked. Your office. Or, that other office. Lena didn't answer. Instead, she walked straight to the front lawn and looked across the street. Karen was out there kneeling by her gardenias, acting like nothing had happened. Lena didn't wave. Karen looked up, met Lena's eyes, and froze. Then she dropped her gardening gloves and vanished inside. Darren watched from the doorway what was left of it as Lena slid something from her purse and placed it quietly on the console table. A badge, polished, real. Darren exhaled. Karen just kicked in a federal investigator's door. Lena smiled faintly. Yeah, she really picked the wrong door. The next morning came to quiet. Darren stood on his porch beside the new plywood, covering the doorframe, coffee in hand, staring out at Maplewood trails. It looked like a peaceful suburb. It wasn't. Across the street, Karen's blinds were half drawn. He could sense she was watching, waiting, stewing, but Lena didn't seem fazed. She moved through the house calmly, collecting details, reviewing footage, typing up statements like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Has she contacted you? Lena asked, sipping her coffee. Not a word, Darren replied. But the HOA's weekly friendly reminder email came in this morning. Guess what the subject was? Let me guess. Unauthorized door design. He held up his phone. Exterior modifications without prior approval. Consequences explained. Sent at 5:15 a.m. Lena chuckled. She's panicking, but Darren wasn't laughing. What if she comes back? Lena didn't look up from her laptop. Then I'll be waiting. Later that afternoon, a white sedan pulled into their driveway. Out stepped a thin man with a clipboard, tucked shirt, and sunburned forehead. He looked like someone who had filed too many HOA citations and hadn't blinked in years. I'm Bradley Withers, HOA treasurer, he said. Karen asked me to follow up regarding your property's compliance status. Darren folded his arms. Which part of my property? The destroyed door? Or the mailbox that offends Karen's sense of order? Bradley cleared his throat, flustered. There's no need for sarcasm. We're just trying to maintain the appearance and safety of our community. Lena appeared behind Darren, dressed sharply, holding a folder of photos. Mr. Withers, she said coolly, we have security footage, time-stamped, showing Vice President Dunsley committing felony property damage. I've filed the report. If you're here to discuss mailbox colors, you'll need to speak to my attorney. Bradley's lips parted, but no words came. He backed away slowly, muttering something about checking with the board. As his sedan pulled away, Lena turned to Darren. They're scrambling. What now? He asked. Now, she said. Now we see what else Karen's been hiding. That evening, Darren got a knock at the back gate. He opened it to find a short woman in a gardening hat, neighbor from 2 houses down. Her eyes darted left and right before she spoke. I saw the footage on your doorbell app, she whispered. My son's friends told me. They said Karen's been doing this stuff for years. Darren raised an eyebrow. She's smashed doors before. No, but she's threatened people. A couple down the block had their porch lights ripped out. She blamed light pollution. Another guy got fined for putting up a little free library. She said it encouraged loitering. Why didn't anyone say anything? The woman looked down. We all thought she had power, people said. She'd been on the board forever, that she rewrote the rules. Lena stepped beside Darren. Rewrote. The woman nodded quickly. Changed votes. Added amendments. The bylaws aren't even accurate anymore, but nobody ever questioned it. You're the first ones who pushed back. Lena exchanged a glance with Darren. Do you have copies of the old HOA guidelines? The woman pulled a USB stick from her pocket. Backed them up 3 years ago, just in case. I didn't know who to trust. Now you do, Lena said, taking the stick. Back inside, Lena plugged the drive into her laptop. She pulled up the archived HOA documents and compared them to the ones on the public site. Darren leaned over her shoulder. Anything? Oh yeah, she muttered. Karen added an entire section about architectural harmony. None of this existed before 2020, and she changed the voting threshold from 60% to 30%, just enough to let herself pass changes with 2 loyal board members. She rewrote the rules to serve herself. Lena leaned back. And if she altered these documents without member approval, that's not just unethical, that's illegal under the Nonprofit Corporations Act. Darren whistled low. Think she knows you're onto her. Lena didn't smile. She just pulled out her phone. She will soon. The next morning, Darren didn't even wait for the coffee to finish brewing. He walked straight to the mailbox, yanked the door open, and pulled out the lone piece of folded paper. Inside, no envelope, no stamp, just a single typed sheet. Lena joined him at the kitchen table as he spread it flat. To Mr. and Mrs. McGill, your conduct is a disruption to our community. HOA leadership will be holding a mandatory meeting this evening to address your violations. Refusal to attend will result in penalties and possible lien procedures. Regards, Karen Dunsley, Vice President, Maplewood Trails. HOA Darren scoffed. Procedures? Based on what? She broke our door. Lena scanned the paper calmly. This isn't an invitation. It's a threat disguised as procedure. Darren paced the kitchen. Can she even do that? What if she's got the other board members in her pocket? She might, Lena said, folding the letter neatly. But she doesn't know that now we have the original bylaws and a record of every fake one she wrote. Lena had already copied the files from the neighbor's USB drive. Her case notes were building fast. Evidence of fraud, falsified rules, abusive conduct, misuse of funds. But tonight, she didn't want to bring court orders or subpoenas. Not yet tonight, she wanted Karen to talk. By evening, the HOA clubhouse looked more like a courtroom than a meeting space. Folding chairs lined the room, filled with uneasy residents. Some clutched copies of HOA newsletters. Others whispered nervously. Karen stood at the front in a pale blue pantsuit, armed with a binder and a forced smile. Let's begin, she chirped, pretending everything was under control. Tonight's topic is non-compliance by Lot 34, specifically regarding unapproved modifications and hostility toward the board. Darren raised an eyebrow. Hostility. Karen nodded. Yes, we've received complaints about language and conduct. That Lena interrupted from the back. Before we go further, could you clarify which bylaws support these penalties? Karen blinked. It's all in the handbook. Page 16, Section B. Lena pulled the document from her bag. You mean this handbook? The one that wasn't approved? By a membership vote and contains changes that violate the state HOA code. The room fell quiet. Karen opened her mouth, but no sound came. Lena stepped forward. This meeting is being recorded. By the way, Karen stammered. You're not allowed to record HOA proceedings without consent. Actually, Lena replied, pulling a folded pamphlet from her jacket pocket. In this state, one-party consent is perfectly legal. You're welcome to check. One of the board members, an older man named Gregory, cleared his throat. Karen, is that true? Karen waved him off. That's not the point. They've violated our aesthetic code. Darren stood. So what exactly was the violation? A glass eagle on the door that gave you the right to destroy property? Karen's voice trembled. That door. That symbol. It doesn't fit the neighborhood. Someone in the back mumbled. That's not a rule. Lena's voice cut in, steady and sharp. There are real violations happening here. Unauthorized financial withdrawals, intimidation, document tampering. You want to talk about not? Let's start with the $12,000 you used to repave your driveway with HOA funds. Karen flushed, red rising in her face. You can't prove that. Lena pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to Gregory. Actually, I can. Bank records from your treasurer Bradley, who also signed a statement this morning. Gasps rippled through the room. Karen's hands began to tremble. This is slander? She hissed. No, Lena said calmly. It's evidence. And if this board doesn't act on it, the Attorney General's office will. After the meeting adjourned, residents approached Darren and Lena quietly. thankful some, looked ashamed for staying silent so long. Gregory stopped them at the exit. I didn't know what she was doing. We trusted her. But this changes everything. There'll be a vote. Good, Lena said. Do it the right way. As they left the clubhouse, Darren looked over at Lena. So, what happens? If they still protect her, she didn't answer right away. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out her badge, and slid it back into her purse. Then I stopped being polite. It was 2:43 a.m. when the porch light flickered on. Darren sat up in bed, blinking at the sudden glow through the curtains. The motion alert had gone off twice in the last hour, and now his phone buzzed again. He reached for it with a groan, expecting a raccoon or a drifting tree branch. But when the screen lit up with the live camera feed, his breath caught in his throat. Karen was back. She stood in the middle of their lawn, snapping photos of the house with an old digital camera. Her eyes kept darting from the windows to the street like she was tracking something or someone. She wasn't even trying to be sneaky. She wore a bright pink robe and slippers, her hair up in a loose bun, muttering to herself between clicks of the shutter. Darren shook Lena awake. She's out there again. Look, Lena blinked at the screen and then sat up, alert. She's documenting something, trying to build a case. At 3 in the morning, Lena got out of bed and walked to the living room, where the curtains were still half open. She pulled them closed slowly, deliberately. She's desperate now. That meeting rattled her. She's looking for anything she can twist. Should we call the police? Lena shook her head. Not yet. Let her file whatever nonsense she wants. But tomorrow, we go in. By sunrise, Karen was gone. The front lawn showed faint footprints. In the Duke, Darren barely finished his eggs before Lena slid a leather folder across the table to him. What's this? Complaint forms. Official ones. We're filing with the State HOA Oversight Committee. Fraud, harassment, abuse of power, and misappropriation of funds. You've had these ready? I've had them ready since she smashed the door. Lena was already dressed in business black, her eyes sharp, the wheels turning. Darren followed her lead. He'd never seen her in this mode before. Focused, strategic, ruthless, without raising her voice. At the HOA office that afternoon, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Karen wasn't at her usual post. Instead, Earl, the silent board member with the always dark sunglasses, stood at the front desk. Flipping nervously through a binder, Lena stepped forward. Is the board present? Earl blinked slowly. There's no scheduled meeting today. Lena smiled just a bit. There's now behind her. 3 neighbors stepped in: Mrs. Carley from lot 22, Greg from lot 19, and that same woman who gave Lena the USB stick. All with papers in hand. Earl shifted. On his feet. What's going on? Lena leaned in. We're calling for an emergency vote of no confidence in Karen Dunsley's leadership, and we have more than 30% of the residents' signatures. Earl froze. Darren added, by your own bylaws, Ivan, the fake ones Karen cooked up, you're required to hold the vote. Gregory, the old board president, appeared from the hallway. His face was pale. She locked the records room this morning, he whispered. Changed the code. Lena raised an eyebrow. That's obstruction. Add that to the file. Meanwhile, Karen was across town, sitting at the county clerk's office, trying to file a cease and desist against Darren and Lena for threatening the harmony of the neighborhood, but she hadn't expected to run into a familiar face in the waiting room. A woman from the compliance office Lena had already contacted. The woman saw Karen's name on the form, smiled politely, and said, "Oh, you're the one under review. My department's starting that audit this week." Karen's pen stopped mid. Back at the HOA office, Lena had gathered the board. Residents were filing in now, no longer whispering or afraid. Some clutched photos, complaint letters, or screenshots. Others carried nothing but stories. Karen arrived at the door just in time to hear someone say, if this is how she's treated them, what's she done to the rest of us? She stepped inside. Everyone went quiet. Her eyes met Lena's across the room. For the first time since it all started, Karen looked uncertain. Lena turned to Gregory. You may proceed. Gregory stood, cleared his throat, and began the vote. Darren stood frozen on the porch, staring at the man in the suit. The government sedan idled behind him, its mirror finish reflecting the faint sunset glow. The man didn't smile. He just held out a leather-bound folder. Mrs. Lena McGill. Lena stepped forward calmly. That's me. He handed over the folder and gave a small nod. You'll find everything you requested inside. The investigation into HOA case 9477B is now officially escalated. You'll have full cooperation from our oversight unit moving forward. And Karen Dunsley, she asked. The man adjusted his jacket. We'll be paying her a visit next. Then he turned, got back in the car, and drove off silent as a shadow. Darren exhaled. So, that's real now. It's actually happening. Lena didn't answer immediately. She was already flipping through the folder, scanning between Karen and vendors, irregularities and reimbursement requests, unexplained withdrawals. She tried to hide a $6,500 landscaping charge under community enhancement, paid to a company that doesn't exist. She created a fake vendor, Darren asked. More like she funneled it through someone else's name, probably someone who owed her a favor. The next morning, Karen's house looked different. The flower pots were gone. The flagpole taken down. The shutters, usually pristine, hung crooked. It was as if the place was starting to unravel, piece by piece, just like the woman inside. Lena received a call before breakfast. Yes. Understood, she said to the voice on the other end. Yes, I'll be there. She hung up and turned to Darren. They're opening a formal ethics hearing. This week, Karen's going to be called in for questioning. On what grounds? Misconduct, fraud, harassment, obstruction. The whole board is being put under review. Darren shook his head in disbelief. One decorative door started this. No, Lena said softly. One woman's unchecked power did. The door just cracked it open. Later that day, a surprising knock came at their patched-up door. It was Bradley, the HOA treasurer. His shirt was wrinkled, his hands shaking slightly. I resigned, he said before they could even invite him in. I couldn't do it anymore. Lena crossed her arms. Why now? Bradley looked ashamed. Karen threatened to fire me from my real job. Said she'd call my boss. Said I let the books get messy and I'd be the one arrested. Darren leaned in. So you falsified the records. I didn't touch them. I just ... didn't stop her. Lena nodded. You have a copy of the financials? Bradley reached into his coat and handed her a flash drive. Everything from the past 5 years? Some of it goes back even further. She's been shifting funds from the neighborhood park budget to a personal P.O. box. Lena took the drive and gave a faint smile. This changes everything. Meanwhile, Karen was on her own warpath. She stormed into the county clerk's office for the second time in 2 days, this time demanding a restraining order against the McGills. They're stalking me, turning everyone against me. My reputation's ruined, she shouted. The clerk, trying to remain professional, calmly asked, do you have documentation of this behavior? Karen fumbled with her purse, pulling out a bundle of blurry photos of Darren mowing the lawn and Lena walking Winston. The clerk raised an eyebrow. These appear to show them ... existing. Karen's voice cracked. This isn't right. I built that neighborhood. But no one behind the desk looked impressed. A quiet murmur filled the office as Karen's name was recognized. Rumors were spreading fast. That night, Lena sat at the kitchen table with Darren, organizing the files from Bradley's drive. This is more than enough, she said. Enough for a federal investigation. Darren looked at her. Do we want to go that far? Lena paused. She tried to bully us. She tried to bury us. And she's done it to everyone else here for years. So yes, if it takes a federal letterhead to stop her from ever doing it again, then yes. Suddenly, there was a crash outside. They ran to the window. Karen's car had clipped their mailbox hard. She didn't stop, just sped off down the street. Darren looked at Lena. Was that on purpose? Lena didn't blink. Does it matter? Lena didn't move. She stared at the message on her phone, jaw clenched, fingers tightening around the device like it might crack in her hand. Darren looked over her shoulder. That's our bedroom. That photo was taken from our yard. Lena didn't answer. She was already walking toward her desk, flipping open a leather case and pulling out a second phone, her agency line. She typed fast, sending encrypted images and coordinates. She didn't need to say much. The photo alone spoke volumes. Who are you calling? Darren asked quietly. Someone I hoped I'd never need to call for something like this. By 8 a.m., an unmarked SUV pulled up beside the house. 2 people stepped out, plain clothes, clear authority in their walk. A tall woman named Sloane and a quiet man named Jarvis. Neither smiled. Lena greeted them like old colleagues. They spoke in short code, glancing at Lena's phone, then at the perimeter of the property. Darren watched from the porch. Still processing how fast things had escalated, Jarvis inspected the mailbox Karen had clipped the night before. This was deliberate, he muttered, but not the real threat. Sloane nodded toward the bedroom window. The photo says more. It's not just intimidation, it's intrusion. Lena looked to Darren. They'll sweep the perimeter. Hidden cameras, bugs, tracking devices, anything. Darren blinked. You think she planted something? I think Karen's crossed every line she can, Lena said. Now she's desperate to stop me before I take away her last ounce of control. Meanwhile, at the Maplewood Trails HOA office, Karen was unraveling. She paced in front of Earl and Gregory, flinging papers, muttering under her breath about sabotage and conspiracies. They're spies, she hissed. That woman Lee, not just some housewife. I've seen her badge. She's dangerous. Gregory looked tired. Karen, the members voted. You've been suspended. You shouldn't even be in this building. Karen slammed her hands on the desk. I built this. Place these homes, these rules, that's my order. Earl looked down at his lap. It was never about the neighborhood for you. It was always about power. Karen's glare could have melted glass. You think I'll go quietly? Gregory didn't answer. She didn't wait. She grabbed her purse and stormed out again. Back at the McGill house, the agents uncovered something Lena had suspected. In the flower bed near the porch, beneath a fake rock, was a small recording device, not professionally installed, just cheap and sloppy. Jarvis held it up with gloved fingers. This isn't standard surveillance. Someone planted this themselves, probably in a rush. Lena sighed. She's not trained, just reckless. Sloan pocketed the device. We'll run it for Prince. Might be useful if she denies placing it. But Lena already knew Karen wouldn't deny it. She'd double down. Sure enough, that night, a new HOA-wide email hit every inbox in the neighborhood. It was from Karen's personal email, not the board. To all residents, you are being manipulated. The McGills are not who they claim to be. I've witnessed suspicious activity. They are not just homeowners, they're infiltrators. This is a matter of safety. Consider this your warning. The message was signed off not with her title but with something chilling. True authority will restore order. Darren read it out loud. She's turning this into a crusade. She's imploding, Lena said, eyes scanning the email. This is the behavior of someone who knows what's coming. The next morning, the board officially released a statement disavowing Karen, stating she was no longer affiliated with HOA leadership and had been banned from administrative access. The locks to the clubhouse were changed, her credentials revoked, but she didn't disappear. Instead, Karen stood outside the clubhouse that afternoon with a sign, "The HOA has been compromised." Neighbors avoided her, kids whispered. One teenager filmed it for social media. Comments poured in, "She's lost it. That's the door lady, right? Didn't she smash someone's house up?" Lena stood by the window that evening, watching Karen pacing back and forth with that sign, her face drawn, lips tight. "She's circling the drain," Darren muttered. "Not yet," Lena said, "but she will." By morning, Lena had already sent the audio file to her contacts at the Oversight Committee. The voice was unmistakable. Karen's words weren't just paranoid, they were threatening. It was the clearest signal yet that she wasn't done. Darren watched Lena pack a small go-bag near the kitchen table. "You going somewhere?" She zipped it shut, just preparing. "If Karen makes good on her threat, I want to be ready for wherever she tries to twist this next." "What could she even do at this point?" he asked. "She's been removed, discredited. Half the neighborhood thinks she's crazy." Lena paused. Desperate people don't need a majority, just chaos. That afternoon, an HOA-wide system notification hit residents' phones. New vote issued via HOA portal. Urgent. The portal, supposedly locked after Karen's removal, was suddenly live again. The vote. Motion to reinstate Karen Dunsley? As HOA president, Darren nearly dropped his phone. She hacked the system. Lena stared at the screen, her voice low. She never lost access. She just waited to use it when it would cause the most confusion. Within an hour, neighbors were calling, texting, knocking at the McGill's door. Confused, angry, some thinking the vote was legitimate, others convinced Karen had forced it through. One man from up the street, Mr. Talbot, looked furious. "We didn't agree to this." "She's going around the board again. She's using fear," Lena said, "and it's working." Meanwhile, at her house, Karen sat behind a desk, laptop open, wine glass half full, eyes bloodshot but blazing with purpose. She wasn't wearing her usual pearls. She was in a hoodie and jeans, typing like her life depended on it. She still had the old backup server login from 2 years ago. She was pushing the vote through that and tracked unregulated and invisible to the current board until it was too late. "I gave these people order," she whispered to herself, "and they threw it away." But she didn't know Lena had already anticipated this move. Inside Lena's bag was a file labeled Server Manipulation Protocols, HOA Private Portals. It was part of a broader database used in federal compliance cases. She had already cross-checked the Maplewood Trails system with that of 2 other neighborhood boards Karen had consulted for in the past. The same access method, the same vulnerabilities. She wasn't just corrupt, she was copying the corruption. Lena called Jarvis and Sloan back to the house. "She's reinitiated a vote illegally." Lena said she still has the old vendor's login, same credential string from the 2021 upgrade. "It's an open door." Sloan nodded. "You sure it's her? She recorded herself bragging about it last night." Jarvis added, "We can trace the IP and shut the portal down, but you'll need to trigger the legal motion for a fraud injunction first." Lena was already ahead of them. "Done. It's being filed as we speak." The next day, Karen hosted a community forum from her driveway, a folding table, a bullhorn, flyers claiming she had been unlawfully removed, that the McGills were federal agents sent to dismantle private communities. "Ask yourselves," Karen shouted through the bullhorn, "why would outsiders care so much about one neighborhood?" A few neighbors walked past without a glance. Some stopped to watch, half in pity, half in curiosity. One kid filmed it again, but inside her house, Karen's screen flashed red. "Your administrative access has been revoked." Then her phone buzzed. A court summons. Her hands shook. Back at the McGill house, Lena was calm. She printed the final file and slipped it into a padded envelope. On the front, she wrote 2 things. The address of the Office of State Community Affairs Evidence. Package, HOA 9477B. Urgent. She handed it to Darren. "Would you drop this off? I think I need to be home when the fallout hits." Darren nodded, already reaching for the car keys. That evening, as twilight fell over Maplewood Trails, Lena stood on her porch, arms folded, watching. Across the street, Karen's garage light flicked on. Then the side door swung open. Karen stepped out slowly, looking around. But this time, she didn't look defiant. She looked ... small. For the first time, Karen saw Lena, and this time, she didn't glare. She turned around and went back inside. Call to action. When people lose power, they often try to set the rules on fire. But Lena didn't flinch. She didn't chase. She just held the line. Stay tuned because the verdict is coming, and Karen's about to face more than just angry neighbors. Ending twist. The next morning, a letter arrived. Not from the HOA, not from Karen, but from the county clerk's office, stamped on the front, petition for civil trial, filed by Karen Dunsley versus Lena McGill. Inside, she was suing for emotional distress. The morning the lawsuit arrived, Darren and Lena sat at their kitchen table, the heavy envelope between them like a challenge. Karen Dunsley was suing Lena for emotional distress. Darren let out a long breath. After everything, she still wants to play victim. Lena gave a small, tired smile. That's how these people work. They rewrite the story until they're the heroes. But now the story is going to court. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread through Maplewood trails like wildfire. Neighbors, reporters, and even some curious HOA members came to watch the showdown. Karen sat stiffly at the plaintiff's table, her eyes sharp but tired. Across the room, Lena and Darren sat calmly, flanked by their attorney. The judge called the case to order. Karen's attorney opened, painting Lena as a woman who had used intimidation, deception, and her mysterious agency badge to disrupt the community and destroy Karen's reputation. Karen's testimony was emotional. She spoke of feeling betrayed by neighbors, of losing her lifelong role in the HOA, and the pain caused by the McGill's campaign against her. But then Lena's attorney rose. We have evidence proving Ms. Dunsley's misuse of funds, unauthorized destruction of property, and deliberate falsification of HOA documents. Security footage confirms she damaged the McGill property without cause. The room murmured. Lena took the stand. She calmly explained her background as a federal investigator, the extent of the HOA's corruption, and the importance of restoring lawful order to the community. When asked about the emotional distress claim, she said, "The real distress came from having one person abuse their power unchecked for years." The judge nodded thoughtfully. Then came the surprise witness, Bradley, the former HOA treasurer. He gave a detailed account of Karen's actions, forging signatures, hiding money transfers, threatening board members. Karen's face drained of color. The turning point was the security footage from the night Karen smashed the front door. The video played on the courtroom screen in grainy black and white. Karen raising a hammer. The sound of splintering wood, then the look of shock when Lena appeared. Gasps filled the room. The defense rested. The judge paused, then addressed the court. After reviewing the evidence, the court finds the claim of emotional distress to be without merit. Instead, this trial has revealed a pattern of abuse of power and misconduct by the plaintiff, Ms. Dunst. He looked directly at Karen. This court orders that the HOA leadership be restored to lawful governance. Furthermore, the plaintiff is liable for damages caused to the defendant's property. Outside the courthouse, neighbors gathered around Lena and Darren. A woman smiled and said, "You did what none of us dared to do. Thank you." Lena smiled back. This was never about winning or losing. It was about making sure fairness wins. Darren looked over the crowd. Maplewood Trails is finally going to be a place where everyone feels safe and heard. That evening, back at home, the damaged front door was finally repaired. A new eagle door glistened in the setting sun. Lena and Darren stood hand in hand, watching the neighborhood settle into quiet calm. "Think Karen will ever come back?" Darren asked. Lena shook her head. "Some people burn bridges to the ground, and sometimes, that's exactly what they deserve."